What does love look like when it's laced with poison? I'm Delith Hayes, 32, and I've spent years swallowing pills to keep my body from betraying me, only to learn my family was doing it instead. I live in Sacramento, where the summer heat clings like a second skin, and I work at a small café off the highway, pouring lattes for tourists who never remember my name. My mother, Vera, and sister Melis live nearby, their voices a constant hum in my life. Always quick to tell me I'm overreacting, that my seizures, my pain, my fatigue are just in my head. I believed them once, thought their concern was love, but now I'm not so sure. The morning it all unraveled. I stood in my bathroom, the cream tiles reflecting the early sun, already turning the room into an oven by 7:30. My hair stuck to my neck as I wrestled with the childproof cap on my prescription bottle, my fingers trembling from the effort. I pressed it against the sink, using my elbow to twist until it popped open. 2 white pills for seizures, 1 blue for the autoimmune thing, 2 yellows for the pain that's lingered since the accident years ago. I've taken this cocktail for so long it's muscle memory, logged each dose in my app like clockwork. But that morning, something felt wrong. I swallowed them dry, chased them with water, and waited for the shaking to ease. It didn't. The tremors, once occasional visitors, had settled in like unwelcome tenants, growing bolder each day. I was already 10 minutes late for my shift at the café, a local spot packed during tourist season. The muffins were good, the iced coffee better, and the Saturday crowd didn't wait. I tied my apron with unsteady hands, forcing a smile for Patricia, my manager, who gave me her usual once-over. "You okay, Del?" she asked, her brow creasing. I nodded, brushing it off. "Just need to shake it off," I said, knowing I couldn't afford to take the 5 minutes she offered. The line was growing, and I threw myself into the rhythm, pouring lattes, calling names, grabbing pastries. For a moment, the motion steadied me, made me feel like I had control, like my body and I were allies again. I grabbed a tray, 2 hot drinks, a scone for table 6, and started across the floor. Then the world tilted. The floor seemed to lurch, the tray slipped, and everything spun into a blur of heat and sound. Darkness followed, not the soft kind, but heavy, chaotic, like drowning with your eyes open. I came to on my back, the cafe's ceiling spinning above me. Patricia's wide eyes hovered. A customer held a damp cloth, and someone was on the phone, their voice urgent. You're okay, they kept saying, but I wasn't. My body felt like it had been unplugged and rebooted, my jaw sore, my head ringing. The ambulance ride was a haze of flashing lights and questions. When was your last dose? The paramedic asked. 7 this morning, I mumbled, barely able to keep my eyes open. You sure? He pressed, his tone sharp. I was sure. I showed him my app, every dose logged at 7 a.m., never missed. His eyes said something colder, something I didn't understand yet. At Sacramento General Hospital, the fluorescent lights burned my eyes, the air thick with antiseptic and reheated soup. A nurse with gentle hands helped me into a gown, asked if I had someone to call. I shook my head. The tests came fast. Blood work, EKG, scans. I counted the ceiling tiles, 23 cracks, then started again to keep my mind from spiraling. Dr. Falk entered, her face too calm, and sat beside me. Delith, she said, crossing her legs. We got your results. I braced for the usual, stress, dehydration, anxiety. Instead, she said, there's no trace of medication in your system. I blinked. That's impossible, I said. They triple-checked, she explained. No seizure meds, no autoimmune drugs, nothing. You think I forgot? I asked, my voice sharp. She didn't nod or shake her head. Has anyone else handled your prescriptions? The question hung like smoke. No, I said, they're in my room. I take them myself. They look the same? She asked gently. Exactly the same, I insisted. But inside, something shifted. A tremor not in my hands but in my core. I clutched the blanket, cold despite the heat, replaying the last month, the worsening tremors, the fatigue, the pain. It wasn't just in my head. I heard Vera's voice in my mind. You don't need those pills, sweetheart. You're just tired. I stared at the bottle in my bag, the label curling at the edges. They looked the same. But now, I wasn't so sure. The fluorescent lights in Sacramento General buzzed faintly, a sound that burrowed into my skull as I lay in the hospital bed, the stiff sheets scratching against my skin. My body felt like a machine that had short-circuited, my jaw still aching from the seizure, my thoughts sluggish but racing all at once. Dr. Falk's words echoed, no trace of medication. I kept replaying them, trying to make sense of the impossible. I'd taken my pills that morning. 2 white, 1 blue, 2 yellows. Same as always. I'd logged them at 7:02 a.m., the app's green checkmark staring back at me like proof of my diligence. How could there be nothing in my system? Not low, not trace amounts, but 0. I stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles again, 23 cracks, same as before, hoping the repetition would anchor me. It didn't. The air smelled of antiseptic and something faintly metallic like the hospital itself was holding its breath. Falk returned an hour later, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her expression still calm but with a sharper edge now. She sat beside me, her chair scraping softly against the tile. "Delith," she said, her voice steady, "we tested the pills in your bottle." I propped myself up, my arms trembling from the effort. "And?" I asked, my throat dry. She hesitated, just for a second, then said, "They're glucose tablets. Placebos. No active medication." The words landed like a punch I didn't see coming. "Glucose?" I repeated, the word tasting like dust. She nodded. "They were made to look like your prescriptions. Same shape, same size, but chemically, they're nothing." I sank back into the pillows, the room tilting not from a seizure but from something deeper, something that felt like the floor had cracked open beneath me. "So I've been taking nothing?" I whispered. She nodded again, slower this time. "Your symptoms, tremors, fatigue, the seizure, they align with medication withdrawal. This wasn't your fault." I wanted to argue, to insist it was a mistake, but the truth was sinking in, cold and heavy. For weeks, maybe months, I'd been swallowing sugar pills, my body screaming for the meds it needed while I blamed myself. Stress, caffeine, skipped lunches. I thought of the pharmacy, Walton's, where I'd picked up my refills for years, the same bored clerk handing me the white paper bag each time. "Have you changed pharmacies?" Dr. Falk asked. I shook my head. "No, always Walton's." She glanced at her clipboard. "Is there anyone who could have accessed your bottles? At home, maybe?" My stomach twisted. "My parents have a key to my room," I said slowly, "for emergencies. My sister Melis too, but she's not around much." Dr. Falk's eyes softened, but her question cut deeper. "Has anyone ever suggested you don't need your meds? That it's psychological?" I swallowed hard. All the time, I thought, but I only nodded. Vera's voice rang in my head again. "You're just tired, sweetheart. It's in your mind." She stood, smoothing her coat. "We're analyzing the rest of the pills. Keep them safe, okay? Don't let anyone else handle them." I nodded, clutching the blanket tighter, my fingers trembling not from illness, but from a growing dread. After she left, I reached for my bag, pulling out the orange bottle. The label was familiar, worn at the edges from weeks of handling, but now it felt like a stranger's. I rolled it between my palms, the plastic cool against my skin. They looked the same. Same faint imprint, same slight weight, but they weren't. I thought of the mornings I'd stood in my bathroom, forcing the cap open, trusting those pills to keep me steady. I thought of Vera's tight smile, Melis dropping off soup when I was at my lowest, saying, "Take your pills, Del." I'd thought it was care. Now, the memory felt like a blade. 2 hours later, Vera swept into the room, her usual composed self, a small bouquet of daisies in hand. She set them on the windowsill, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice syrupy, "you must have been so scared." I stared at her, my throat tight. "The doctors found something," I said, testing the waters. She waved a hand. "Doctors love drama, always a crisis." I inhaled slowly. "They tested my meds, Mom. They're not real. Someone replaced them with fakes." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Well," she said, adjusting the flowers, "maybe you've had a bad batch. Pharmacies mess up sometimes." "No," I said, firmer now. "They ran multiple tests, glucose tablets." Her response came too fast. "I'm sure it's a mix-up." Something in me cracked. I'd spent years under her logic, her calm dismissals, but now the cracks were too wide to ignore. "Did you do it?" I asked quietly. She blinked, startled. "Excuse me? You always said I didn't need them," I pressed. "That it was in my head." Her voice rose, just a touch. "You don't get to accuse your mother of poisoning you." "I didn't say poisoning," I said, my voice steady. "I said replacing." She pressed her lips together, took a slow breath and said, "This victim thing, Delith, it's beneath you." The door opened, saving us both. Dr. Falk stepped in, her presence cutting through the tension. "Vera," she nodded politely, "we're doing more tests. There's reason to believe the tampering was intentional." Vera's tone brightened instantly. Oh goodness, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Dr. Falk's gaze was sharp. Misunderstandings like this can be fatal. The silence that followed wasn't accidental. It pressed against my chest, heavy and cold, as Vera smoothed her blouse and left without another word. The hospital room felt smaller after Vera left, the air thick with her lingering perfume, a floral scent that clung like damp laundry. I lay back, the pillow stiff against my neck, and stared at the window where the daisies she'd brought sat wilting under the fluorescent glow. Outside, the Sacramento sky was gray, clouds pressing low like they were holding their breath. My fingers traced the edge of the blanket, still trembling, not from the seizures aftershocks, but from the weight of her words. This victim thing, it's beneath you. I'd heard variations of it my whole life. Delith, you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But now, with Dr. Falk's warning about intentional tampering ringing in my ears, it felt different. It wasn't just dismissal. It was a wall they'd built to keep me from seeing the truth. I thought of Melis, her casual smile when she'd drop by with soup, always at my lowest points, her voice soft as she said, "Take your pills, Del." I'd thought it was sisterly concern, her way of bridging the gap between us. Now it felt like a script, rehearsed and deliberate. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, a text from her. "Mom says you're upset. Let's talk when you're calmer." Calmer. As if my anger was the problem, not the sugar pills I'd been swallowing. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my medication app, scrolling through months of logged doses, each one a tiny act of trust in myself, now shattered. The hospital's hum, beeping monitors, muffled footsteps, filled the silence, but it couldn't drown out the question Dr. Falk had left me with. Who else has access to your medications? My parents' key to my room was for emergencies, they'd said when I moved back home after the accident. Vera had insisted, her voice warm but firm. "We just want to keep you safe, sweetheart." Melis had a key too, though she rarely used it, always too busy with her own life, her perfect bun, and her perfect excuses. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? They were family. But now, I saw every moment differently. The way Vera would linger in my room when she dropped off laundry, the way Melis would glance at my desk when she visited, her eyes flicking to the orange bottles. Had they been watching, waiting, planning? I pushed the thought away, but it kept creeping back, like a shadow that moved when I wasn't looking. That afternoon, Melis arrived, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, her tote bag slung over one shoulder. She smiled, bright and effortless, like we were meeting for coffee, not sitting in a hospital room. "You look better," she said, setting her bag on the chair Vera had occupied hours earlier. I didn't answer, just watched her adjust her scarf, her movements too casual. "Mom's worried," she added, her voice light. "She thinks you're taking this too hard." I swallowed the burn in my throat. Taking what too hard? The seizure? Or the fact that my meds were fake? Her smile faltered just for a second before she recovered. "Del, you know how pharmacies are. Mistakes happen. Don't turn this into a conspiracy." Her tone was so reasonable, so practiced, it almost made me doubt myself. Almost. "It's not a mistake," I said, my voice low but steady. "They tested 3 bottles, all glucose." She raised an eyebrow, her lips pursing like I'd disappointed her. "And you think what?" "Someone swapped them on purpose." She laughed softly, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "You've been watching too many movies." I stared at her, searching for a crack in her composure, but she was a wall, just like Vera. "Who else had access, Melis?" I asked. She shrugged, picking at a nail. "I don't know, Del. You leave your stuff everywhere. Maybe you misplaced something." I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice flat. My bottles were in my room, locked in my desk. She met my eyes then, her gaze cool. "You're sounding paranoid. Maybe that's why you're feeling worse." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard them before. Paranoid, dramatic, fragile. But now they felt like weapons, not warnings. Dr. Falk came by later, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm of my thoughts. She didn't sit this time, just stood at the foot of my bed, her clipboard resting against her hip. "We've sent the bottles for a full chemical analysis," she said. "And we're pulling pharmacy records. If someone tampered with them, we'll find out." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She hesitated, then added, "Delith, I need you to think carefully. Has anyone in your family ever suggested you stop taking your meds? Or questioned why you need them?" I closed my eyes, Vera's voice echoing again. You don't need those pills. It's all in your head. All the time, I whispered. She didn't push, just nodded. We'll keep you updated. Stay strong. After she left, I picked up the pill bottle again, rolling it between my fingers. The label was curling, the plastic scratched from weeks of handling. It looked so familiar, so safe, but it wasn't. I set it down and stared out the window, the gray sky blurring into itself. I'd always thought family meant safety, a soft place to land, but now I wasn't sure what it meant at all. The rain started again, tapping the glass, and I let it fill the silence, each drop a reminder that something was wrong, not with me, but with them. The hospital room was dim now, the fluorescent light softened by the evening's amber glow seeping through the blinds. I sat propped against the pillows, my hands still clutching the pill bottle, its familiar weight now a lie. The rain had stopped, leaving the window streaked, and the silence in the room felt heavy, like it was waiting for me to break it. Dr. Falk's question, "Has anyone ever suggested you don't need your meds?" kept circling, each loop tightening the knot in my chest. I thought of Vera's calm dismissals, Melis's two bright smiles, the way they'd both told me my pain was just a mindset I could fix if I tried harder. For years, I'd swallowed their words as readily as my pills, believing their doubt over my own body. But now, the truth was clawing its way out, and I couldn't look away. Dr. Falk returned the next morning, her face more tired than before, shadows under her eyes like she'd been up all night. She carried a tablet, its screen glowing faintly as she sat beside me. "Delith," she said, her voice low, "we have something you need to see." My stomach churned, but I nodded. She tapped the screen, pulling up grainy security footage from Walton's pharmacy, timestamp 2:47 p.m., the day before my last refill. There was Melis, hair in a low bun, sunglasses perched like a headband, stepping up to the counter. She smiled, signed a form, took the white pharmacy bag, and sat at a side counter. The camera caught it all, her glancing around, casual but deliberate, then pulling out my prescription bottles. She dumped the pills into a zip-top bag, replaced them with identical-looking tablets from a pouch in her purse, and sealed the bottle back up. Her movements were smooth, practiced, like she'd done it a dozen times. "Dr. Falk paused the video. She did this 3 times that we've confirmed," she said quietly. "We pulled 6 months of footage." I stared at the frozen image of Melis, her face calm, almost bored, as she swapped my lifeline for sugar. My throat burned, but no words came. "She knew," I finally whispered. "She didn't just guess, she knew what she was doing." Dr. Falk nodded, her eyes steady. "And she didn't look nervous, not once." The footage played again, a different day, same routine. Melis smiled at the pharmacist, joked, tucked the bag away like she was wrapping a gift. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was cold, methodical. A knife slipped between ribs while she smiled. I thought of the times she'd sat with me, handing me a bowl of soup, saying, "You need to rest, Del." I'd thanked her, thought she cared. Now I saw her watching me shake, lose weight, struggle to stand, all while knowing she'd caused it. The pain wasn't just physical anymore. It was a deep, aching grief, like losing something I'd never really had. Dr. Falk closed the tablet. "We're building a case," she said. "This is tampering, Delith. It's serious." I nodded, my fingers tightening around the blanket. But it wasn't just the pills. That afternoon, alone in the room, I opened my bag and found a folder I'd stuffed in months ago, buried under receipts and old mail. Inside were loan documents, $15,000 in my name, dated 6 months back. The signature looked like mine, but I'd never applied for a loan. I held the papers, my hands shaking, not from illness, but from fury. They'd taken more than my health. They'd taken my name, my future. I remembered the roof repair last fall, how Vera had mentioned a leak, how I'd handed her $2,000 in cash without question. Later I'd seen a card in the dining room. "Miss, thank you for helping with the roof. Love, Mom." I'd paid, but Melis got the credit. I thought of the gift cards I'd bought for Elo's kids, the babysitting for Melis's late meetings, the cash for Logan's therapy. None of it acknowledged, all of it reassigned to someone else. They'd called me selfish, said I didn't contribute, while forging my name on debts I'd never see paid. I snapped photos of the documents, my hands steady now, and tucked them into the folder. The hospital's hum faded as I stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks. Vera's voice echoed, "You never feel well, Delith." Melis's laugh. You're being paranoid, but I wasn't paranoid. I was awake. That night, I lay awake, the shadows shifting across the ceiling. The folder sat on the bedside table, its weight heavier than the pill bottle. I thought of every family dinner where they'd praised Melis, toasted her as the backbone, while I sat silent, my contributions erased. I remembered Vera's 62nd birthday, the chocolate raspberry cake I'd paid for, carried up the hill only for Aunt Marla to ask Melis where she'd gotten it. Melis had smiled, said nothing, and I'd stood by the fridge, invisible. They didn't just steal my meds, they stole my place, my voice. The rain started again, soft against the glass, and I whispered to myself, they knew. The words weren't loud, but they were true, and that was enough to keep me from sleep. The hospital room was quieter now, the hallway's bustle fading as the night shift settled in, leaving only the faint beep of a monitor somewhere down the corridor. I sat upright, the thin sheet pulled over my knees, my phone resting on the bedside table, its screen dark but heavy with possibility. The footage of Melis at the pharmacy played on a loop in my mind. Her casual glance, the swift swap of pills, the way she tucked the bag away like it was nothing. My hands didn't shake anymore, not from the seizure or the withdrawal, but from a clarity that burned like a low flame. Vera's words from yesterday, this victim thing is beneath you, felt like a dare, a challenge to stay small, to stay silent. But I was done shrinking. I needed proof, not just for Dr. Falk or the police, but for myself, to silence the part of me that still wanted to believe this was a mistake. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Melis's contact. I typed, "Can you stop by later? Need help with some paperwork." Her reply came in minutes. "Be there in an hour." The words were cheerful, dotted with a smiley face as if we were planning a coffee run. I set the phone down, my pulse steady, and reached behind the pillow, where I'd tucked a small voice recorder I'd borrowed from the hospital's patient advocacy office. Dr. Falk had slipped it to me that morning, her eyes serious but kind, saying, "Just in case you need to document anything." I hadn't planned to use it, not really. But now it felt like a lifeline. I tested it, whispering my name into the mic, the red light blinking softly. It worked. Melis arrived just after 7 p.m., her tote bag slung over her shoulder, her smile as bright as ever. "How we feeling today, Del?" she asked, setting the bag near the bed. I forced a small smile, keeping my voice light. "Better. Just trying to sort some stuff out before I leave." I gestured to the side table, where I'd scattered some old insurance forms from my bag. "Can you help me organize these? I need to close out some claims." She nodded, already rummaging through the papers, her movements quick and distracted. I made small talk, asking about home, if Vera was sleeping okay, if Dad had said anything about my tests. She laughed softly, not looking up. "Dad thinks you're being dramatic as usual. Mom too, honestly." My throat tightened, but I kept my tone even. "Does Mom think the seizure was my fault?" She paused, then chuckled, still sorting papers. "She thinks it's a reset, you know? Maybe now you'll stop clinging to those pills and see you're stronger without them." The air in the room thickened, but I didn't flinch. "So, the seizure was necessary?" I asked, my voice flat. She glanced up, her smile faltering for a split second. "She's worried, Del. We all were. You kept getting worse, and nothing changed. Maybe this woke you up." She shrugged, like it was obvious, like my collapse was a lesson I'd needed to learn. I let the silence stretch, watching her shuffle papers, her fingers twitching slightly. "You think I don't need the meds?" I pressed. Softer now, she sighed, setting the forms down. "Look, if this makes you rethink things, maybe it's what had to happen." There it was, not an admission but close enough, her words slipping out like they'd been waiting to escape. I nodded, my hand brushing the recorder hidden under the sheet, its red light still blinking. After she left, I waited until the hallway was quiet, the nurse's footsteps fading. I pulled out the recorder and played it back, my heart pounding as her voice filled the room, soft and sure. Maybe it's what had to happen. I saved the file, uploaded it to a cloud folder with a password only I knew, and sat back, the weight of it settling in my chest. It wasn't just Melis. I thought of Vera, her gloves in the hallway camera footage Dr. Falk had mentioned in passing, her methodical movements as she swapped my pills. I thought of the loan documents, my signature forged, my contributions erased. They hadn't just doubted me, they'd orchestrated this, planned it, watched me unravel while smiling. I opened my phone and typed to Melis, "Next time you touch my pills, I'll open a case file." I hit send, my hand steady, and set the phone face down. The city lights outside flickered through the blinds, and I stared at them, not blinking. The next morning, Dr. Falk came by, her coat slung over her arm like she'd rushed in. "We've got more," she said, sitting beside me. "Hallway footage from your parents' house. Vera, 3 separate times, swapping your meds." I nodded, unsurprised now. "Show me," I said. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Vera in her slippers, gloves on, pouring my pills into a container, replacing them with fakes. No hesitation, no guilt. She didn't even flinch, I murmured. Dr. Falk's eyes met mine. She knew exactly what she was doing. I leaned back, the pillow cool against my neck. I thought of every time Vera had called me fragile. Every time Melis had said I was overreacting. Every family dinner where they'd toasted each other while I sat invisible. They hadn't just betrayed me, they'd rewritten me, turned my illness into their narrative, my pain into their strategy. The recorder sat on the table, its weight heavier than the pill bottle. I wasn't just fighting for my health anymore. I was fighting for my truth. The hospital bed creaked as I shifted, the thin mattress doing little to cushion the ache in my joints. A reminder of the weeks I'd spent without my meds. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, but the air felt lighter now, like the truth had cleared some of the fog. My phone sat silent on the bedside table. Melis's lack of reply to my message louder than any response could have been. I'd sent it last night. "Next time you touch my pills, I'll open a case file." And the absence of her usual quick deflection told me she'd read it, felt it, maybe even feared it. Outside, the Sacramento sky was clearing, the clouds parting to let slants of sunlight spill across the tile floor. I wasn't shaking anymore, not from withdrawal or doubt, but from a quiet resolve that had taken root somewhere deep, where their words couldn't reach. Dr. Falk had left me with a number for a patient advocacy lawyer, her card tucked into my bag like a promise. "Think about it," she'd said, her voice steady but urgent. I didn't need to think. I was done hesitating. That morning, I called the lawyer, a woman named Karen, with a crisp voice and a no-nonsense tone. I told her everything, the footage, the recorder, the forged loan documents. She listened without interrupting, then said, "We've got enough to start. Send me what you have." I did, uploading the files from my cloud folder, each click feeling like a step away from the house I'd called home. By noon, I was packing my bag. Essentials only, no family photos, no sentimental trinkets. The hospital had arranged a ride to a short-term apartment downtown, a place no one else had keys to. I was leaving, not just the hospital but them. The drive was quiet, the city blurring past in streaks of gold and gray. The apartment was small, beige walls and generic furniture, the kind of place that felt temporary but safe. I dropped my bag by the door, the creak of the floorboards under my feet a new sound I could get used to. The kitchen window overlooked an alley, the heating unit clicking every few minutes, but it was mine. I sat on the stiff couch, my hands still, and opened my laptop. The folder of evidence was there, screenshots of the loan documents, the pharmacy footage, the audio of Melis's voice saying, "Maybe it's what had to happen." I forwarded it all to Karen, my fingers moving with purpose. Then I stood, walked to the window, and let the city's hum fill the silence. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without apologizing for it. Back at the house, I'd gone straight to my room, ignoring Melis in the kitchen and Vera on the phone. The door creaked as I shut it, the sound final. My desk was untouched, or so it seemed, but I knew better now. I opened the top drawer, finding the pile of mail I'd ignored for months. Overdue notices, past due balances, letters from banks I'd never heard of. One envelope held 3 notices, one marked final warning, my name printed in bold, Delith Hayes. I flipped through the loan documents again, the $15,000 in my name, the signature a near-perfect mimicry of mine. They'd taken my identity, my trust, and called me selfish while doing it. I snapped more photos, my hands steady, and tucked them into the folder. In the dining room, I yanked open the buffet cabinet, the drawer sticking as always. Inside was the card. "Miss, thank you for helping with the roof. Love, Mom." I'd paid for that repair, $2,000 in cash, but Melis got the praise. I set the card beside the forged documents, a quiet monument to their lies. I returned to the living room, where Vera was folding laundry, Melis lounging on the couch, her phone glowing in her hand. They looked up as I set the folder on the dining table. "I'll be forwarding these to a lawyer," I said, my voice even, no tremble. Vera's hand stilled, her eyes narrowing. "What is that?" she asked, her tone too casual. "Everything," I said. "Every debt I didn't create, every lie you signed with my name." Melis stood, her smile gone. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, but her voice wavered. "No," I said, louder now. "You've minimized me my whole life, called me dramatic, ungrateful. I'm done." I stepped closer, looking at Vera. "I'm awake." Her eyes didn't flinch, but her lips pressed tight. "This family has always supported you," she said. I didn't blink. "You supported a version of me that stayed quiet. I'm done being that." I turned and walked to the door, pausing to look back. "I warned you once. This is me listening to myself." I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The click of the latch was enough. Outside, the sun was dipping, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The neighborhood looked softer, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I got into the car waiting for me, the driver silent, and watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed. Karen, confirming she'd received the files. "We'll file by end of week," her message read. I leaned back, the leather seat cool against my neck, and closed my eyes. The weight of their betrayal was still there, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. It was fuel. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving their version of me, the one they'd tried to erase, one sugar pill at a time. The city lights flickered as we drove, and I let them blur, each one a step toward something new, something mine. The courthouse hallway smelled of old carpet and polished wood, a stale mix that clung to the back of my throat as I sat on a bench outside the courtroom. My hands rested in my lap, no longer trembling, the folder of evidence now in Karen's hands, her briefcase a shield between me and the weight of what was coming. The morning was quiet, unnervingly so, the kind of silence that hums with anticipation before a storm. I'd taken my pills that morning, white, blue, 2 yellows, from a new prescription filled at a different pharmacy, one Vera and Melis didn't know about. Each swallow felt like a small act of defiance, a reminder that I was here, alive, despite them. Karen had warned me the hearing would be tough, that seeing them might shake me, but I felt steady, anchored by the truth I'd pieced together over weeks. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, the wooden benches worn but clean, the air cool despite the August heat outside. Vera sat across the aisle, her gray dress a departure from her usual pastels, her face older, sharper, like the mask she'd worn for years was thinning. Melis sat beside her, her blazer crisp, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Oren was there too, on the edge of the row, his gaze on the floor, as if he could detach himself from the scene. Dr. Falk was to my left, ready to read my statement, her presence a quiet reassurance. The medical team had advised against me testifying in person. Stress could trigger another seizure, but part of me wanted to stand, to face them, to let my voice fill the room. Instead, I nodded for Dr. Falk to begin. She stood, her voice clear and steady, reading my words with the weight of someone who'd seen me through the worst. "Delith Hayes trusted her family," she began. "She let them into her bedroom, her records, her routine, and they used that trust to swap her medication for placebos over and over for months. This wasn't just physical harm, it was spiritual theft, a dismantling of a life, one pill bottle at a time." The room stilled, the air heavy with the weight of her words. Jurors shifted, some wiping their eyes, others staring at the floor. Vera sat motionless, her hands folded, her face unreadable. Melis blinked slowly, her jaw tight. Oren didn't look up. The prosecution played the evidence, pharmacy footage of Melis swapping pills, hallway clips of Vera in her gloves, the audio of Melis saying, "Maybe it's what had to happen." The courtroom didn't gasp, it just sank into a collective silence, cold and deep, like water closing over your head. Karen presented the forged loan documents, the $15,000 in my name, the card thanking Melis for my contribution to the roof repair. Each piece was a brick in the wall I'd built against their lies. When the jury returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on charges of tampering, fraud, and medical endangerment. Vera and Melis didn't react, their faces blank, as if they'd expected this but refused to feel it. Oren left before the gavel fell, his absence louder than his presence. That evening, back in my apartment, The beige walls felt less temporary, more like a canvas I could paint over time. My phone buzzed. Detective Graves, with a new clip. "Security hallway cam," his message read. "Thought you should see this." I opened my laptop, the screen casting a pale glow across the room. The footage was grainy, taken just after the verdict. Vera and Melis walked through the courthouse corridor. No reporters, no jury, just them. Vera turned to Melis, a faint smile on her lips. "Good thing she didn't testify," she muttered. "Might have fooled the jury." I stared at the screen, my breath steady but sharp. They'd heard everything, the timeline, the diagnosis, the guilty verdict. And still, Vera thought it was about performance, about control. I closed the laptop, the click echoing in the quiet room. I didn't forward the clip. It was mine, another piece of truth I didn't need to share. The next morning, I stood at my kitchen window, the alley below catching the early light. The heating unit clicked, a rhythm I was starting to know. I thought of the family dinners, Vera's toasts to Melis, the way they'd looked past me, erased me, while I paid for their repairs, their groceries, their praise. They hadn't just stolen my health, they'd stolen my place, rewritten my story to fit their narrative. But now, I was writing my own. The courtroom had given me justice, but this apartment, this quiet, was giving me something else, freedom. I opened my pill organizer, the colors familiar but new, and took each one slowly, not out of habit but out of choice. The city hummed outside, and I let it carry me forward, one breath at a time, into a life they couldn't touch. The air in my new apartment was still, the kind of quiet that didn't press against me but held me, like a hand I could trust. The beige walls caught the morning light, and the heating unit clicked softly, a steady pulse in the background. I sat at the small kitchen table, my pill organizer open in front of me. White, blue, 2 yellows, each one a choice, not a chain. I'd been out of the hospital for 2 weeks, living in this furnished downtown rental, a place with creaky floors and too many light switches, but no keys in anyone else's hands. The silence here didn't make me feel small. It made me feel whole. I'd started working part-time at a bookstore on Hawthorne, shelving novels and reading to customers on slow, rainy afternoons. June, the Tuesday shift worker, brought her dog and shared her snacks, asking, "You okay today?" without prying. Her kindness was simple, uncalculated, and I clung to it like a lifeline. Yesterday, I'd stood behind a podium at a Sacramento community hall. The room filled with 60 faces, women, a few men, some students with notepads. The topic was medical gaslighting, and I was the closing speaker. "My name is Delith Hayes," I'd said, my voice steady despite the weight of their eyes. 2 months ago, I had a seizure at work. That seizure saved me, because it led to blood work, which led to the truth. My medications were sugar pills, swapped by the people I trusted most. The room went still, not a whisper, not a shuffle. I told them about Vera, Melis, the footage, the forged loans, the way my family had rewritten my pain as drama. "There's this idea that family means safety," I said, "but not all homes are shelters." The applause started slow, then swelled, and for the first time I felt seen, not as the fragile daughter but as myself. Back in the apartment, my phone buzzed, pulling me from the memory. An email from Detective Graves. Subject, policy confirmed. Attached. I opened the PDF, my breath catching as I scanned the lines. A life insurance policy, filed 14 months ago, beneficiary Vera Hayes, my mother. The amount was enough to cover a new roof, a new car, maybe even the debts they'd pinned on me. She'd planned my death with the same care she'd planned her birthday parties, signing dotted lines while I counted crumpled bills for my meds. I whispered aloud, "She planned my death more carefully than my birthdays." The words weren't dramatic, they were true, cold and sharp like the hospital's fluorescent lights. I closed the laptop, the screen's glow fading, and sat back, letting the truth settle. I thought of the USB drive that arrived days ago, no note, just a single audio file. Vera's voice, tinny and clear. "She's a drain, a burden. I wish she'd just go. It hadn't broken me, it had freed me." I'd sent the evidence, footage, audio, messages to every relative, every aunt, uncle, cousin, even the church potluck organizer. Some replied with shock, apologies, horror. Others stayed silent, their absence louder than words. Vera's only response, "You've embarrassed us." Not sorry, not ashamed, just embarrassed. That word was a confession, a window into her heart, and it told me everything. Now, I stood at the window, the alley below catching the drizzle that had returned, a soft mist settling over Sacramento like a veil. I worked at the bookstore, watered my basil and rosemary, whispered to my stubborn pothouse, "You don't get to quit. If I didn't, you can't." I wrote letters to myself, "Dear Del," ending with "Love, Delith," tucking them in a drawer without rereading. Each morning, I took my pills with intention, not routine, each swallow a middle finger to the ones who'd called my pain imagination. I didn't forgive them. I didn't need to. Peace wasn't forgetting. It was this. A chair I could sit in without flinching. A bed I didn't lock twice. A morning where I didn't wonder who I'd need to be enough. The drizzle outside my window slows, each drop catching the light as it slides down the glass, a quiet rhythm that mirrors my breath. I sit at my table, the tea I brewed cooling in its mug, the steam curling upward like a promise of calm. My life is small now, not in a diminished way, but in a way that feels deliberate, like a garden I've chosen to tend. The bookstore's shelves, June's easy laughter, the weight of my pill organizer. These are my anchors, not their voices, not their lies. Vera and Melis are gone, not just from my home, but from my heart. Their sentences handed down in a courtroom that saw what they refused to, my truth. The insurance policy, the forged loans, the sugar pills. They weren't just betrayals. They were attempts to erase me. But I'm still here, writing my own story. One letter, one pill, one quiet morning at a time. I don't need their apologies or their love. I need this, the soft click of the heating unit, the scent of rosemary on my windowsill, the knowledge that I am enough. My pain was never in my head. It was in their hands, and now those hands can't touch me. I lean toward the window, the rain's whisper fading, and I whisper back, "I'm free."